So this week, we're going to be talking about the figs because I believe it is the 21st, without looking, going by memory, that the new moon is going to be showing up. We're going to be at the new moon watch. And that means we should be expecting the figs, because the figs are already in the 6th month of the biblical year. And I'm going to just pop open this Facebook page because I know that not all of you are on Facebook. Bravo for you, actually. I think that's quite commendable in these days. But because it is where I put things so that they go out the quickest, I've kept this Facebook page. And here we go. I'm going to screen share. So this was, let's see, Friday, and this was a news article from a website, not a website, a Facebook page coming out of Gaza. This is the Palestine Post News, and that's kind of blurry, but it says figs harvesting started in Gaza. So you can see that Gaza is already harvesting their figs. I had prayed for a witness coming out of the south that we would see figs ready, because having it in the north is great. I'm in the north of Israel. And Israel's just like the United States. The things in the south are ready ahead. The fruits and vegetables are ready ahead of the fruits and vegetables in the north. But it's nice when you know and you can see and you have another witness from another region that we're on schedule. And we're on schedule. And in that post, I show you that I tell you here in the north that the figs are beginning to turn the brown purple color here too. And so we're basically looking at the figs needing to be ready in approximately, well, they're ready now, but I would say that those were probably from a grove. So we're looking at the figs from the homes needing to be ready approximately in 3 more weeks, roughly. And you're going to see why I see 3 more weeks when we get into our study today. Let me flip my page here. And we're going to cover not a lot of scriptures on the figs. There's a lot of scriptures in the Bible. A lot of them have to do with mentions of the first fruits and things such like this. So we don't need to look at 99 scriptures that mention the first fruits or the 7 species. Okay, we need to look at the scriptures that are going to tell us what the figs mean. And I'm going to start in the beginning. I'm going to start in Genesis 3:7. Let me get my sword open. Genesis 3:7, and I'll remember to share that screen here just as soon as I get this open. Here we go. So this is the story, of course, of Adam and Eve, and this was right after the serpent had spoken to the woman and convinced her that she wasn't going to die, and she had taken the fruit and given it to her husband, and they both ate. 3:7 says, and the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. So when I was reading this, what stuck out to me about this was that they sewed fig leaves together. I have been one that have kind of seen that Adam and Eve probably fell in the month of the Abib, the barley, that time of the year, because that's when our story opens. And if we follow the storyline, here's what we see. We see, first of all, they sowed fig leaves. We see, second of all, that the Lord God found out that they were naked. And what was the first thing he did? He put skins on them. He killed an animal and he put skins on them. Let me go over here. 3:21, and unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skins and clothe them. Now I'm going to take you to another verse here. We're going to go to Matthew 24. Okay, we looked at this verse at the beginning of the year. At the time, just before the barley would have been offered for first fruits in 2020. Okay, so before that date, before the date of the first, before the date of, the first fruits of barley in 2020. And I'm going to show you what the Father showed me at that time, and then we're going to go back and look at Genesis again. This is the Messiah talking. He says, now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, there's that leaves, he says, you know that summer is nigh. Well, if you've been hanging out with me for a while, you know that I look at this word and I understand this to say harvest. Because when we look at the word harvest in Hebrew, that word is kites. And this root word, the kaf tzadi, that root word has to do with everything that is cutting, that is harvesting, that is to harvest, that was harvest. And in fact, it's the Feast of Weeks, or Shavuot, that's called the Feast of Harvest. So when I read this, what I'm seeing in my mind, it's now learn the parable of a fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that the harvest is nigh. So likewise, when you see all these things, know that it's even at the door. And when I'm looking at this, I'm understanding that the door is the Messiah, because it was on the 14th that, as the Lamb of God and as the unleavened barley cake in the Passover meal, he was harvested. He was taken from the earth. And he says, I am the door. No one gets into the sheepcote and to where the sheep are unless they enter by me. So he was the door. And now we have this parable of a fig tree putting forth a leaf. Okay, so now when we go back to Genesis, let's look at that again and see if we see a pattern here. Genesis 3, what did I say? 7. That they were both, the eyes of them were both opened, and they knew they were naked, and they sewed leaves together and made them an apron. So just before verse 21, when Elohim took the life of an animal and clothed them in skins, we have Adam and Eve covering themselves with the leaves of a fig tree. Okay, I need some feedback here. Does anybody see this pattern? Have I been clear?
Yes, I see it, Becca. Just real FYI, Nancy's trying to get in also.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. Let me go get Nancy. You know what? I don't even have a thing from her showing up. Okay, there. But I see it now. Let's bring Nancy on in. Okay, so that's the very first thing. I'm sorry, Nancy. That's the very first thing I saw starting out on this, is that timing that I had, I'm sorry, Nancy, that timing that I had originally questioned about Genesis 3, I see the pattern holding. That first there's this clothing of the fig leaves, and then that's taken away, and then they're clothed by animal skins. How am I going to do this without my iPad? We'll see if I can do this. Hang on. So there was something interesting on the word fig that I saw when I was doing this study. The word fig looks like this. And it's called to end. So basically in English, it would look like this. To end. This same word right here, and you're going to see this later as we go through this. This same word right here can mean bad. It can mean naughty. And it's pronounced, I'll put the dots on this one. Tu'un. So tu'un is figs and tu'un is naughty, which we're going to get a picture of this in just a minute. Okay, so I found that very interesting. All right, now we're going to jump way ahead to Judges 9, 10, and 11. Stop sharing this. Hang on. Okay, this story. This is the story of Abimelech, who was Gideon's son. And after Gideon had died, and Abimelech was his son by a concubine. So Abimelech killed all of the sons of Gideon by the wife, except for one. One escaped. And this youngest one, Jotham, the youngest son of Gideon, which they also call him Jerubbaal, this youngest son of Gideon, stands up on the mountain on Shechem. Okay, remember where the curses and the blessings were pronounced over in that area? And he says to them, tells them this parable about the trees went out to anoint a king over them. And he mentions the fig, and everything he mentions as one of the 7 species. We go to Judges 9, 10, and 11, and it says, and the tree said to the fig tree, come thou and reign over us. But the fig tree said unto them, should I forsake my sweetness, my good fruit, to be promoted over the trees? Then the tree said unto the vine, come thou and reign over us. And the vine said unto them, should I leave my wine, which cheereth God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? God, still hearing sometimes as I go along, and so I've got to make a note. Okay. And be promoted over all the trees. Then said all the trees unto the bramble, come thou and reign over us. And the bramble said unto the trees, if in truth you anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow. If not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. So basically what happens in this story is that Elimelech is later on killed because of his acts. But our story here of the parable, actually the Messiah is going to use later in the New Testament. And we're going to go look at that. Let's see if I'm going to do that now. Let's do that now. All right, go here. We're going to Luke 6:44. A tree and its fruit. So this is the understanding of Judges. For a good tree bringeth forth not corrupt fruit, neither doth a corrupt tree bringeth forth good fruit. For every man is known by his fruit. For men do not gather thorns, for thorns men do not gather figs. For a bramble bush nor from a bramble bush gather they grapes. For a good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaketh. So we have right here a bramble bush being used by the Messiah. For a bramble bush, nor of a bramble bush do they gather not grapes. For thorns, they don't gather figs. Okay, so this is basically what the Messiah is teaching us, is that the story of Abimelech was a story of the treasure of his heart, that he brought forth evil treasure when he killed his father's sons by his father's wife. Okay. Okay, so we're going to now begin to look at how figs can be correctly applied in a positive setting. We're going to go to 1 Kings. We're going to go to 4:25. Okay. This is the time that Solomon had begun to reign over Israel. And this is how we're to understand the significance of the vine and the fig tree. It says, and Judah and Israel dwelt safely, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, from Dan even unto Beersheba. What is it we were told in that last verse about the story of Abimelech? We're told that figs bring sweetness and grapes bring joy. So to dwell safely is to have a sweet life and to have a joyous life. And we're going to go now to 2 Kings 18:31. Okay, this is when the king of Assyria, speaking to Judah, speaking to the people of Judah, were trying to tell them that if they did not pay him tax, pay him a levy, that he was going to destroy Jerusalem. So this is what he says to them. He says, this king of Assyria, hearken not unto Hezekiah, for thus saith the king of Assyria, make an agreement with me by present, come out to me, and then eat every man of his own vine, and every one of his fig tree, and drink you every one waters of his own cistern. So this was the king of Assyria saying, the only way you're going to have peace and safety is by making an agreement with me and paying a levy, paying a tax to the king. Proverbs 27:8. Is everybody hanging in there? Am I going too fast? You have any questions so far?
No, you're doing good, Becca.
18, sorry. 27:18. Whosoever keepeth the fig tree shall eat the fruit thereof, so he that waiteth on his master shall be honored. Okay, so there is a real tie here. And we're going to see this at the end of the verse when we get this all unwrapped, but I'm going to tell you that the fig tree, keeping the fig tree, represents keeping your covenant of peace and safety, especially of the sweetness of life, okay? That living with the blessings and benefits. Have you guys ever seen, I'm going to stop right here real quick and stop sharing and talk to you a second about the fig. Have you guys ever seen a fig? Have you ever opened a fig and looked inside? Do you understand how a fig works? Let me see if I can pull up a picture of a fig. Really quick. Images. All right, so this is just a Google search, and I'm just going to share this with you. Okay, this is the inside of a fig. Figs do not bloom. Why don't figs bloom? Because this is the fig. This is the bloom. Do you see right in here the seeds and the little like wormy things? This is like, I think they call them the stamen of the flower. Okay, let me pull up. Let me see if I can find a better picture for you here. This picture may be better. This is a stock photo. So you see these lines right here. These are the little things, the little fingers that stick up in the middle of the flower that the bee would normally come down inside of and pollinate that flower for the almond tree, for the tomato, for whatever it is that the plant was making, okay? These things reside on the inside of the fig. So let's talk about that idea of this bloom residing on the inside of the fig. Okay, can anybody think of a reason why that this might be significant? While you're doing that, I'm going to pull up another verse. I'm going to change this to I'm going to share this with you. So the people were commanded, the people of Israel, all the people of Israel, this was spoken to B'nai Israel. So if there was one man in a group of women, they were B'nai Israel, they would be sons. This is like Spanish, Hebrew's like Spanish. If there was only women in the group, they would be Bat Israel. So B'nai Israel simply means that this was a mixed company of people, one, or the only people that existed in the nation of Israel were men. So take your choice. I think it was a mixed group of people because I think that there were more than men that existed in the nation of Israel. So the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, bid them to make fringes on the border of their garments throughout their generations. Now this was for the whole nation, right? Okay. That they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribband of blue. And it shall be unto you a fringe, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them, that you seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you used to go a whoring, that you may remember and do all my commandments and be holy unto your God. And this is one of those ones where he's talking about he brought him out of Egypt and he's jealous and all of this stuff. So now we're going to look at this word fringe. And this word, depending on if you say it like my, like my husband does, who speaks more Yiddish than Hebrew, it's either zit zit, or if you say it like an Israeli does, it's zit zit. So right over here in the Strongs, we see it as a floral or a wing-like projection that is a forelock of a hair, a tassel. So remember that our fig is an inverted blossom of the fig tree. We're going to go right here to the root of this word. And we're going to see that tzitz, okay, it's glistening, it's a flower, okay, we're going to keep going. Jutes, to twinkle, to blossom, to flourish. So why is that important with our fig? Because the figs had zutes on the inside. They had blooms on the inside. And we're going to see in just a minute that the figs represented the people of Judah. So they were to have what Messiah had to come and do. They were to have the Torah inscribed inside of them, but their hearts at that point were never soft enough to allow it. They had hearts of stone rather than the hearts of flesh. Okay, so let's keep going. So whoever protects and preserves the fig tree shall eat the fruit thereof and guard his master's honor. That's a really important verse. Okay, now I'm going to show you what Elohim does when he makes war. Are you ready? Let's get this over here. Did I quit sharing that? I have to share that again, I guess. Screen share. We're going to go to Psalms 105. He's telling Israel here the story of what he did in Egypt. And he's going to tell them something very important about what he did when he made war on Egypt. Psalms 105, verse 33. Oops, got to pull this up. Sorry, guys. It says, he smote their vines and also their fig trees and brake the trees of their coasts. In this verse, he's basically saying he took their peace and safety when he made war on them. Okay, if you go back up here and look, it talks about all the curses he did, the signs and wonders he did in the land of Ham, how he set darkness and how they rebelled, and they rebelled, you know, all this stuff, and he goes on and on and on. And then he tells them that he smote their vines also and their fig trees, and he brake the trees of their field. So he made war on Egypt. He took Egypt's peace and safety. Now I want you in your mind to begin factoring in what's going on around us today. Okay? Song of Solomon 2:13. This goes back to that verse in Matthew that we were seeing, right? Learn the parable of the fig tree. The fig tree putteth forth her green figs. The vines with tender grapes give a good smell. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. Okay, you guys who've been with me, you understand that this is in timing with the first fruits of barley and the harvest of the Leah bride. The first fruits of barley that the Messiah offered as Melchizedek priest after his resurrection. This verbiage in this verse is that perfect timing. Okay. Isaiah 34. We're going to go to 3 and 4. Okay. So this is already after we've seen or actually it's before Isaiah 63, where we see the Messiah coming as this strong warrior from Edom. What you need to know is that this parallels with that. Come near, ye nations, to hear, and hearken, ye people. Let the earth hear, and all that is in the world, and all things that came forth of it. For the indignation of the Lord is upon the nation, and his fury upon all of their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them. He hath delivered them unto the slaughter. And this is before the destruction of the first temple. But we're going to see, as we said from last week, that they were pretty much mirror images, and we're going to see this play out in Josephus's account. Isaiah 34:3. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. And all of the hosts of heavens shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall roll together as a scroll, and all their hosts shall fall down, as the leaf falleth off the vine, and as a fig from a fig tree. Let's see, I'm going to go to Micah 4:4 next, I think, but there's something else I'm supposed to show you too, so I have to remember that. Again, but they shall sit every man under his vine and under his fig tree, and none shall make them afraid, for the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it. So this thing of sitting underneath the fig tree and the vine indicated a time when the people of God would dwell in peace and safety. Let me just do a quick Google search here, and I'm going to share a verse with you. I'm looking for it. If I can find this verse, I wish I would have written it down. I didn't. I need to apologize to Abba that I didn't think it was worthy of writing down, but yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't see it. There are two verses, actually, that talk about that when the first fruits of the fig tree are ripe, that you literally shake the tree and they fall. So that's the one I wanted to bring to your attention with that. Oh, no, I do have it. Oh, good. So I'm so sorry. It's just further down. Let's keep going. I'll show it to you. Good. Okay. That was Jeremiah. Let's see. That was Micah. Oh, I jumped way down. Let's go to Jeremiah. Going back up now. $14. Okay, this is speaking of the daughter of Babylon. We looked at this verse last week with the grapes. For they have healed the hurt of my daughter, of my people slightly. 13 says, I will consume them, saith the Lord. There shall be no grapes on the vine, nor figs on the fig tree, and the leaf shall fade, and the things that I have given them shall pass away from themselves. Jeremiah 24, 1 through 8. Okay, this story is for finally going to learn that the figs represent Judah. The Lord showed me, and behold, 2 baskets of figs were set before the temple of the Lord after that Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away captive Jeconiah, son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and the princes of Judah, with the carpenters and the smiths after Jerusalem, and had brought them to Babylon. 1 basket had very good figs, even like the figs that are first ripe. So apparently, I'm really excited because my little fig tree is a year and a half ahead of time, and it made figs this year. And I'm very excited to find out how really good these figs are for the first fruit. So that's exciting to know that they're very good. 1 basket had very good figs, even like the figs that are first ripe. The other basket had very naughty figs. Remember that word that I showed you in the beginning, that ta'in meant figs and ta'un meant naughty, okay? The other basket had very naughty figs, which could not be eaten. They were so bad. Then the Lord said unto me, What seest thou, Jeremiah? And I said, Figs. The good figs, very good, and the evil figs, very evil, that cannot be eaten. They are so evil. And again, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, yeah?
It's 91, so I'm waiting.
Okay, thank you. And again, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, like these good figs, so will I acknowledge them that are carried away captive to Judah, whom I have sent out of this place into the land of Chaldean for their good. For I will set my eyes on them for good. I will bring them again to this land. I will build them up and not pull them down. I will plant them and not pluck them up. And I will give them a heart to know me, that I am the Lord, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God, for they shall return unto me with their whole heart. As for the evil figs, which cannot be eaten, they are so evil. Surely thus saith the Lord, so will I give Zedekiah the king of Judah and his princes and the residue of Jerusalem that remain in this land, and them that dwell in the land of Egypt. I will deliver them to be removed into the kingdoms of the earth for their hurt, to be a reproach, a proverb, a taunt, and a curse in all the places where I have driven them. And I will send the sword, the famine, and the pestilence among them, till they be consumed from off the land that I give unto them for their fathers. So here we can see that at this point in history, that the figs represented Judah, Jerusalem. Okay? That's really important that we understand that this represents people. Let's see. Let's go to Hosea 2:2. Sorry, 2:12. Okay, this is, there's a lot of covenant language in this part of Hosea. We're just going to start with Hosea 2:2. Plead with your mother, plead with your mother, plead, for she is not my wife. Now this is Hosea. Remember, he had her marry the harlot as a prophecy against Israel. So he's living out this prophecy. against Israel in the wife that he married. She is not my wife, neither am I her husband. Let her therefore put away her whoredoms out of her sight, and her adulteries from between her breast. Lest I strip her naked and set her out as in the day she was born, and make her a wilderness, and set her like a dry land, and slay her with thirst. This part of the curse over Israel is not finished, by the way. That's why we are so dry. I am very convinced that in the day that the nation of Israel came across the Jordan River, it was not like it is now, that it was a lush, very lush piece of land. Hosea 2:4 says, I will not have mercy upon her children, for they be the children of whoredoms. For their mother played the harlot. She that conceived them hath done shamefully, for she said, I will go after my lovers that give me my bread, which is wheat, my lechem, my water, my wool, my flax, my oil, and my drink. Therefore, behold, I will hedge up thy ways with thorns. There's those thorns again, and make a wall, that she should not find her path. And she shall follow after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them, and she shall seek them, but not find them. Then she will say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then it was better with me than now. Okay, so she did not know that I gave her the corn, which is the grains, the wheat and the barley, the wine and the oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which she prepared for Baal. Therefore I will return and take away my grains, my corn and my barley. My wheat and my barley in the time thereof, and my wine in the season thereof, and will recover my wool and my flax given to cover her nakedness. Now I will discover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and none shall be delivered out of her hands. I will cause all of her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, her Sabbath, and all of her solemn feasts. Until this day they have ceased. They're keeping the wrong calendar. I will destroy her vines and her fig trees. Therefore she hath said, these are the rewards that my lovers have given me. I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall eat them. So what he was saying is I'm going to take her peace and her safety, her sweetness and her joy. She had given her lovers, the false gods, she had given them credit for having given her the sweet things in life, the joy in life, the peace and the safety. You're going to see what happens when he does this. I cannot find if there's no place that's recorded in the destruction of the first temple when the city of Jerusalem was actually destroyed. But I have to assume, because he is a God of patterns that never varies, he does not change, that he also destroyed the city, not only the temple, but he also destroyed the city in conjunction with the figs. So I have to assume that, but I have not been able to find that. If anybody ever finds that, please let me know. I'd love to see that. Hosea 9:10. I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first stripe in the fig tree at her first time. But they went to Baal Peor and separated themselves unto that shame, and their abominations were according as they loved. So this is not the priests. Now we're talking to people. Okay, so we're getting ready to go into the New Testament, but I just want to recap from the first ketubah, the first covenant, that we've learned that the temple and the priests correlate to the great harvest. The city of Jerusalem and the people correlate to the figs. That is their what is it called? That's the meaning of it anyway. That's what it means. Okay, Matthew 7:15 through 20. I think we did look at this one, or this one. Hang on. This may be the other one. I think this is the other one. Yeah, this is the other one. Matthew 7:15 through 20. We're going to begin to see why that he's actually talking to people here. A tree and its fruit. This is exactly like we had looked at. I think it was in Luke. Yes, in Luke. But now it's in Matthew, and he gives more detail. Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are raving wolves. You shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? So every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast in the fire. Therefore, by their fruits ye shall know them. So every tree that brings forth not fruit is hewn down and cast in the fire. I'm really careful. Allegories, that's the word I was looking for, allegories. The allegory of the grape is the priest. The allegory of the figs are the people of Jerusalem and Judea. I'm really careful with making allegories to modern day with the Word of God. April and I have talked about this a little bit. I do it from time to time when I really heavily see the impression that I'm being given. But I'm going to do it again today. You know, the Word of God is a wheat seed. We've learned that the New Testament tells us that Yeshua is the grain of wheat that had to fall to earth to bring forth many. We learned that when Adam fell and he was created in the image of God, that he had to have a different symbol because he no longer could live eternal like Elohim. And so he made him not a wheat kernel, but a barley kernel. We saw in Corinthians that Paul said that about the resurrection, that the body that will raise is not the seed that you will plant. The seed that you will plant is just a bare grain, and some may chance of wheat in the resurrection. So once we take this wheat seed of the Word of God in our lives, we really only have two choices. Speaking of this tree, we really only have two choices. We have the choice to bring forth fruit, or we have the choice to cast that seed out of us. Those are the only two choices that we have. Bear fruit, look like our Father in heaven who created us, the Father of us all, Elohim, or to cast that seed, his seed, out and look like the father of darkness, the enemy of our God, Satan. It's much like a pregnancy. Once you're pregnant, you can't not be pregnant unless you get rid of the seed, because you're going to bring forth fruit. And I really, really, really wonder, really, truly wonder if there is not a tie with the abortion rate that we're seeing in the world, and understanding, losing the understanding that the seed that come from God also represents in the woman in the church being pregnant with the seed of God. And that we're to bring forth fruit. And the only way we don't bring forth the fruit is to cast it out. There are very few congregations, fellowships, you want to call them kahila, you want to call them messianic synagogues. There are very, very few of those places that with a passionate whole heart chase the wheat seed of the word of God to bring forth fruit. And since it does represent the bride of Christ, and we don't see much fruits of the Spirit, people coming to faith in these organizational bodies, I just see a correlation between this tree with the good fruit and the abortions that we're seeing in the United States. It's not all the way congealed in my mind, but I'm definitely seeing it.
I agree with you, Becca. I see that same thing, and I don't know if I'm getting ahead, but I wanted to point out also one of the things that just grabbed my attention while you were teaching was in Genesis 3, they sewed fig leaves and they covered their loins. They made aprons out of it. And that is directly tied into the Tzitzits.
Tzitzits, and also the apron of the high priest.
Yes. So that where the loins are, that's where we bear fruit. That's how we're able to be fruitful.
Yes. Yes, I agree 100%. 100%. Yeah, so there are some really amazing parallels in these patterns you see throughout the Bible, and he uses, when you see the history and you see these things mentioned in history, I do believe he's giving us a timing. When you see prophecy to come and he uses them for prophesying war or prophesying what he did, then he's speaking again. He's speaking to what that first fruit represents to him. So when he disquieted Egypt, when he made war against Egypt, he took their grapes and their figs and he made war against them. He took their peace and their safety. He took their joy and their sweetness. Egypt was wealthy. Egypt had slaves. Egypt was, one of the wonders of the world. And so when he stripped their figs and their grapes from them, he took all that from them. Even though it was in the first month, it wasn't the timing of it, but the symbol of it he performed in them. Okay, Matthew 21:19 through 21. Okay, share this. Okay, this is when he cursed the fig tree. And he was going into the city. So I've been taught so many things about this understanding of this, but here's what we do know for sure, is that when he did this, he was leaving where Lazarus had lived, and he was coming by a Levitical city that sat just across the Kidron Valley from the Temple Mount. Now, this Levitical city, supposedly, according to what I've understood, was actually Levites that lived outside of the city of Jerusalem, as a Levite would live outside of the camp if they were in the tabernacle in the wilderness. And the purpose of these Levites in this city, in this village outside of the city of Jerusalem, was for pronouncing lepers and people with contagious diseases clean. So what you can see from this position is you can see all of Jerusalem as the Messiah is going to, immediately after this, enter into the temple and start throwing out the money changers. Okay, so he's going to begin immediately dealing with people as soon as this curse is pronounced. Now in the morning, as he returned into the city of Jerusalem, he hungered, and he saw a fig tree in the way. And he came to it and found nothing thereon, but leaves only, and said unto it, Let no fruit grow on thee henceforth forever. And presently the fig tree withered away. And the disciples saw it, and they marveled, saying, How soon the fig tree withered away. And then, of course, he says, don't doubt and all of this. And immediately after he goes into the tent here, and he's challenged on his authority, and he kicks out the money changers. The curse that he put on the fig tree was on the city of Jerusalem and on Judah, because he was overlooking Jerusalem when he said it, number one. Number two, we've already been told about the basket of naughty figs and the basket of good figs. So when he cursed the fig tree, he was cursing Jerusalem. John 1:48, is that right? That doesn't look right. We're going to go there anyway. Yeah, this is it.
Could you repeat that, please?
John 1:48.
Thank you.
Does anybody know Moto G stylists? Somebody waiting to get into the chat? This is the reason. Huh?
I don't know that name. Wait, hold on. Just Moto G Stylist?
Yeah, is waiting to get in.
Okay, stand by.
So, yes, this is the reason Judah doesn't believe in the Messiah. They're blinded. Yep. Yep. Okay. So I think that we finally have the understanding of what Messiah is going to say here to Nathaniel. Start at John 1:43. The day following, Jesus would go into the Galilee, and findeth Philip, and saith unto him, Follow me. Now Philip was of Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip findeth Nathanael, and said unto him, We have found him of whom Moses in the law. Wait a minute. Saith unto, We have found him of whom Moses and the law and the prophets did write. The comma threw me, sorry. Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. And Nathanael said unto him, Can any good thing come out of Nazareth? And Philip said unto him, Come and see. Jesus saw Nathanael coming. Did I share that? Let me do that. I'm sorry. Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him and said unto him, Behold an Israelite, indeed, whom is no guile. And Nathanael said unto him, Whence knowest thou me? And Jesus said unto him, Before Philip did call thee, when thou wast under the fig tree, I saw thee. Nathanael answered and said unto him, Rabbi, thou art the Son of God, thou art the King of Israel. So seeing Philip under the fig tree meant that Nathanael was right with God. Isn't that amazing? After all of this time, we can finally understand the fig tree. We know that Nathanael had a covenant with God, and that his life was sweet, and that he had peace and safety, and that he had the Torah on the inside of him, because that's where the tzitzit remain in the fig tree, in the fruit of the fig. That's where the bloom is, on the inside. And Nathanael answered and said unto him, Rabbi, thou art the Son of God, thou art the King of Israel. And Jesus answered and said unto him, Because I have said unto thee, I saw thou under the fig tree, believest thou? Thou shalt see greater things than these. So, yeah.
Becca, I don't know anyone by that name, and I looked in the group. So I I wouldn't let them in. It doesn't match any of the names of anyone in our Hebrews chat group.
Yeah, and this just Moto G stylus does not reflect anybody that any kind of name that we would think
Wow.
of as a brother. So I'm going to remove. Thank you. Yes, I do want to remove. Thank you. Okay. All right, so we're going to look at let me go back up here and bounce off this Isaiah 34 real quick. And then we're going to go look at Josephus's account of the destruction of Upper Jerusalem. Okay, now do remember that this is the destruction of the first temple, but do remember there were so many parallels in the destruction of the first and second temple. In fact, historians will tell you the only difference was the fact that the nation of Israel, Judah actually, set fire to Solomon's temple, and Hezekiah's temple, the Romans set fire to that one. So the parallels between the two destructions is just uncanny. 432, for the indignation of the Lord is upon all the nations, and his fury upon all their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them. He hath delivered them to slaughter. Their slain shall be cast out. Their stink shall come out of their carcasses. The mountains shall be melted with their blood. All the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, and their hosts shall fall down, as the leaf falleth off the vine, and as a falling fig from a tree. Okay, I'm going to go to Josephus. Shut this real quick. Okay, we're going to take a slight detour, and we're going to go to the Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs website, because I want you to see what they have to say about this time of the destruction of the temple and the city. Okay, we're going to hear about the upper city during the time of the Second Temple period. During the reign of King Herod, at the end of the 1st century BCE, Jerusalem had grown enormously in area, and intensive building activity unparalleled in the city's history took place. Many buildings were constructed. The most impressive of them, the Temple Mount and the temple itself. The city was surrounded by walls with many towers. At the northeastern corner of the city, Herod built 3 massive towers that protected the royal palace just south of them. Of these towers, only the base of the one traditionally known as the Tower of David remains today. It's incorporated into the Ottoman citadel of the city south of the Jaffa Gate. Now, take all of this tongue-in-cheek, because the Jews do have an agenda, and it's a no Messiah agenda. So I don't agree with everything that's written here, but the residential area on the western hill of Jerusalem during the second temple period, its area today extends over the Jewish and Armenian quarter of the old city, and Mount Zion beyond the walls to the south became known as the upper city. The name stems from the fact that it is topographically higher than the rest of the city. We learned that last week when we talked about the fire, how even though the temple was built high, it was on a lower elevation than the upper city, but yet when it was on fire, it looked like everything was one level. It was topographically higher than the rest of the city, even the Temple Mount. It was replanned and rebuilt with the finest Roman tradition by Herod and his successors with blocks of large buildings separated by streets and plazas along which palaces and public buildings stood. Now they're going to quote the New Testament. Isn't this interesting? Jews who don't believe in Messiah are going to quote the New Testament. The upper city was the neighborhood of the rich, with large, elaborate dwellings inhabited by families of the high priests, of the local aristocrats. Can't say that today, but you know what I mean. What is the word? Somebody give me the word, please. Do you know when you live out of the United States for 15 years, like I have, you lose words literally if you don't use them every day?
Aristocracy.
Thank you. Why was that so hard? It didn't sound right in my ears. Aristocracy. So it didn't sound right. Here were the palaces of the Hasmonean kings, of King of Herod, of the high priest Caiaphas, who are mentioned in the New Testament. Here Jesus was arrested and held for a night before he was handed over to the Roman procurator Pontius Pilate for the sentencing. So they're quoting the New Testament. This next paragraph, the walls and the towers and the elaborate palaces of the upper city were described in detail in the contemporary Jewish historian and native Jerusalemite Josephus Flavius. He was an eyewitness to the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE. He also describes the conquest of the upper city, where Roman soldiers plundered palaces and elegant homes and burned them to their foundation on the 8th day of Elul in 70 AD, 1 month after the destruction of the temple. So now we're just going to take month of Elul. Okay, and we're going to go to Wiki. Because Wiki is going to tell me right here. Are you seeing the screen with the Wiki search result, everybody? Let me stop sharing and do it again because I want to make sure you're going to see it. Elul is the 12th month of the Jewish civil year. Remember, the Jews have 4 New Years. The one that starts in the 7th month is called the civil New Year. The one that starts at the head of the year that we think of as the month of the Abib, is called, now it's called the Ecclesiastical year, but not that long ago it was called the agricultural year. So they're always changing their terms and making them more modern and more applicable to their people. So Elul is the 12th month of the Jewish civil year, but it's the 6th month of our calendar, the one that starts with the month of the Abid. The 6th month will begin for us with the next new moon. The 6th month is the timing of the first fruits of the figs. Isn't it amazing how Elohim, what do you want to say, prolonged the destruction of Israel? So it began with the temple on the grape harvest, the first fruits of grapes, and it ended with the upper city on the date of the first fruits of figs. Let me go back. Stop sharing. Want to make sure you see this. I'm going to share it again. Uh-oh, I have questions. Let me check my questions. Hang on. Oh, I can't see them. I'll do that here in just a second. Okay. So 1 month later, on the 8th of Elul, the 8th day of the 6th month in 70 AD, this is what happened, and we're going to look at it in more detail. They record this. Caesar, finding it impractical to reduce the upper city without earthworks, owing to the precipitous nature of the site, on the 12th month of Lois, which is Av, appointed the task. This was after the destruction. Remember, the destruction was began on the night of the 9th, and it was finished on the 10th. So on the 12th of this same month, he apportioned the task among his forces to build this earthworks. The conveyance of timber, however, was arduous because the environs of the city, all of the environs of the city to a distance of 100 furlongs having, as I said, been stripped bare. The earthworks now having been completed after 18 days of labor, on the 7th month of Gorpius or Elul, the Romans brought up the engines. Some of the rebels, some already despairing of the city, retired to the ramparts of the citadel. Others sunk down into the tunnels. Poured into the alleys, sword in hand, they, the Romans, massacred indiscriminately all whom they met, and burnt the houses with all who they had taken refuge in. Often in the course of their raids, on entering the house for loot, they would find whole families dead and rooms filled with the victims of the famine. Running everyone through who fell in their way, they choked the alleys with corpses and deluged the whole city with blood, so much so that the fires were extinguished by the gory stream. Remember the passage we just read in Ezekiel, how their dead bodies would be piled and the stench would be, and it looked like the mountain was melting with their blood? Towards the evening, they ceased slaughtering, but when night fell, the fire gained mastery, and the dawn of the 8th day of Gorpius, Elul, broke upon Jerusalem in flames, a city which had suffered such calamity. The Romans now set fire to the outlying quarters of the town and razed the walls to the ground. Thus was Jerusalem taken in the 2nd year of the reign of Vespasian, on the 8th of the month of the 6th month. Okay, Elul, Gorpicius. The whole thing is written in Josephus. And I have Josephus downloaded, but I cannot figure out how to pull it up on this here, on this computer, so I can share it with you. So I just want to bring out a couple more little points that they ... leave out and connect the story in their paragraph of telling Josephus, because they ... leave out some important things. See here, references.
Becca, there was a couple of people waiting in the waiting room. One of them is a friend of Julie's, that she's going to get me her Facebook information so I can add her. And then Maria was in there, but she went ahead and I told her that it would be recorded and she could watch it later, since we were an hour into the teaching. So just an FYI.
I admit this one here. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think so. Julie Renee, I think is the name.
Yeah.
Yep, that's one of Julie's friends.
Okay, all right. So, okay, now we're looking at, this is Jude the Wars, book 6, chapter 8. And we're going to scroll down to paragraph 4. Okay. So it says, the Romans overcome them by their numbers and by their strength. And what was the principal thing of all, by going joyfully about their work, while the Jews were quite dejected and become weak. And as soon as part of the wall was battered down, and certain of the towers yielded to the impression of the battering rams, those that opposed themselves fled away, and such terror fell upon the tyrants, as was greater than the occasion required. For before the enemy got over the breach, they were quite stunned and were immediately for flying away. For now one might see these men, who hitherto had been so insolent and arrogant in their wicked practices. So he's talking about the Jews. I want you to be sure who he's talking about. To be cast down and to tremble, in so much so that it was a pity, that it would pity one's heart to observe the change that was made in those vile persons. Accordingly, they run with great violence upon the Roman wall that encompassed them, in order to force away those that guarded it, and to break through it to get away. But when they saw that those who had formerly been faithful to them had gone away, as indeed they fled, whithersoever the great distress they were in, they were in pursuit of to be. Well, I love King James English. Okay, as indeed they were fled, whithersoever the great distress was persuading them to flee, as also when those that were running before the rest of them, that the western wall was totally overthrown, while those said that the Romans had gotten in, they were near and looking out for them. So this talks about, it goes on and it says that the power of God exercised upon these wicked wretches and the good fortunes of the Romans was supernatural, is what he's saying, because that they had such fear and that they didn't need to come out of the towers that they were held up in, because the Romans couldn't possibly have broken the towers down. And yet by some unseen supernatural fear, they had been made to flee these towers. So besides using the enemy to take away the fig tree from Jerusalem, we see that God himself fought the people of Jerusalem by causing them to have a fear that was not even logical and actually flee their places of stronghold and safety. We're going to go to book 6, chapter 10, and he's going to conclude it by saying, and thus was Jerusalem taken in the 2nd year of the reign of Vespasian, on the 8th day of the month of Elul, which we know is the 6th biblical month. And it says, it has been taken 5 times before. Josephus records, it has been taken 5 times before. This was the 2nd time of its desolation. For Shishak, the king of Egypt, and after him Antiochus, and after him Pompey, and after them Sosius and Herod took the city, but still preserved it. But before all these, the king of Babylon conquered it and made it desolate, 1,468 years and 6 months after it was built. And this is going to interest you because we talked about this last week. But he who first built it was a potent man among the Canaanites, and in our own tongue called Melchizedek, the righteous king. For such he really was, and on which account he was there the first priest of God, and built a temple there, and called the city Jerusalem, which was formerly called Salem. However, David, the king of the Jews, ejected the Canaanites and set tied his own people there. So that was a part I did want you to see when we were finishing up this account, that even Josephus recognizes the Melchizedek as a type of a Canaanite priest. And he was a priest worshiping the God of Israel that had built a temple. So there's another proof from our message last week that these things pass with the covenants. Okay? They pass when the covenants pass. They pass when Elohim sets a people out of his covenant and takes a new people into his covenant. So how does that apply to us today? Already you should see it applies to us. Have we entered into a covenant with Elohim?
Yes.
We have. We've entered into a new marriage. Same terms, the breach, the ketubah is the same, but we have a new marriage in the blood of the Messiah. Here's the hard part, because I've been getting a whooping all week long. I mean, I just been getting a whooping. I don't know what to tell you. This lesson is just, like Paul says, the things I want to do, I don't do, and the things I don't want to do, I do, but there's still no excuse. It's sin that has dominion in my life, right? So we know that the temple and the priest, their allegory was the grapes. We know the city of Jerusalem and the people, their allegory was the figs. In Exodus 19:6, let me go here. Get rid of this real quick. Get it out of my way. Exodus 19:6. And I'm going to share this. Okay, in Exodus 19:6, he tells the Israelites, "You shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel." Now I'm going to leave the screen up and change locations in the Bible with eSword. If you don't see these references, please somebody tell me, okay? We're going to go to 1 Peter. 2:19. Whoops. No, 2, 5, and 9, sorry. We'll just scroll back up. What was 19? I don't know. And that's 2 Peter anyway. Let's try that again all over. Ye also, as lively stones, are built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God by Jesus Christ. Therefore, also, it is contained in the scripture, "Behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and he that believeth on him shall not be confounded." 1 Peter 2:9, "But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light." So the priesthood is passed on to us in our day and age. Let's verify that in the Bible. Let's go to Matthew 20. Verse 1. "For the kingdom of heaven is likened to a man that is a householder, which set out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And he said unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you. And they went their way. And he went out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, and did likewise. And about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing idle, and saith unto them, Why stand ye here all the day idle? And they said unto him, Because no man hath hired us. And he said unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, that you shall receive. So when even was come, the Lord of the vineyard said unto his steward, Call the laborers, and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. And when the first came that were hired, about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. And when they came, my eye slipped off the verse. And when they came that were hired about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. And when the first came, they supposed that they should have received more, and they likewise received every man a penny. And when they had received it, they murmured against the good man of the house, saying, These last have wrought but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal unto us, which have bore the burden and the heat of the day. But he answered one of them and said, Friend, I do thee no wrong. Did thou not agree with me for a penny? Take that thine is, and go thy way, and I will give unto the last, even as I give unto thee. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will do with my own? Is my eye evil? Is thy eye evil because I am good? So the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. Many are called, but few are chosen. This is a prophecy of the priesthood passing out of the hands of the previous priests. Whether you want to look at it as Melchizedek or the probably him and the Levitical priesthood, the Kohanim. It's a picture of it coming to our generation and the generation of the first century believers. Matthew 21:28. But what think you? A certain man had 2 sons, and he came to the first and said, Son, go work today in my vineyard. And he answered and said, I will not. But afterwards he repented and went. And he came to the second son and said likewise. And he answered and said, I will go, sir, and went not. Whether of them twain did the will of his father? And they said unto him, the first. Jesus saith unto them, Verily I say unto you, that the publicans and the harlots go into the kingdom of God before you. And who was he talking to? He was talking to the chief priests and the elders of the people. Okay, you need to know that Jew in the New Testament had become a term that indicated Judah. Romans 2:17, a lot of people look at this verse and they really like it, but they don't realize the gravity of it if they haven't studied the grapes and the figs. 2:17 says, But thou art called a Jew and resteth restest in the law, and make thy boast of God, and knowest his will, and approve the things that are more excellent, being instructed out of the law, and art confident, that thou thyself art a guide to the blind, a light of them that are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of babes, which hath the form of knowledge and of the truth of the law. And now he's going to go down here and say, But he is a Jew, which is one inwardly, and not circumcision. I'm sorry, he is a Jew. I'm tired today, guys. So sorry. I hope this isn't as rough as it feels like to me. But he is a Jew, which is one inwardly, and circumcision that is of the heart, in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. So when we entered the covenant with our kinsman redeemer, Yeshua, he was from the tribe of Judah. Just like we see Elizabeth in Luke chapter 1, verse 5, she was living with a Levite, even though she was from the tribe of Judah. She had become part of the tribe of Levi because her husband was a Levite. When we marry the Messiah, when we enter in that ketubah, and we enter into the Brit Hadashah, the new marriage in the New Testament, we become a member of the tribe of the Lion of Judah. Judah is our tribe. If we haven't accepted the Messiah, then we're not part of Judah. But if we've accepted the Messiah, we're part of Judah. That's all we can lay claim to, is being part of Judah. Therefore, since our husband is a Jew, we are those spiritual Jews. They were in the First Testament. Paul was writing them, or the author of Romans was writing them. But if we have also accepted that same offering from the Messiah in his body, then we too are Jews.
Amen.
So these species have passed to those who have placed their hope and confidence in Yeshua. We are the ones that are offered peace and safety, joy and sweetness because of the Messiah. Does Jerusalem and the Temple Mount have peace and safety? No, they have enemies on all their borders threatening war every day. We have terrorists in the West Bank and Gaza that almost squeezes the country of Israel in two, that threaten us every day. They have no peace and safety, and I promise you, they have no sweetness and joy of life. I promise you. They may think they do. You may find a rare soul here and there who actually, has something that sets them apart from the rest of the people. But overall, no, it does not exist. Now, so if we're looking at the body, how does this apply? How do the grapes and figs apply to us today? And how does it apply to what we're going through? You can remember that we've talked about this, that just as Rome seized Jerusalem at Passover, so basically the greater world went into lockdown for coronavirus. And I believe just as Judah had good figs and naughty figs, that the body of Messiah has good figs and naughty figs. That the body of Messiah has priests, people who see themselves in that position that don't represent his blood correctly. And if you're on, let me take one more verse here before I go on. Let me take you to Judges 8:16. Okay. Oops, where'd my voice first go? What did I say? Hang on. I'll get it real quick. No, that's not it. Hang on. Yeah, that was it. Judges, yeah, that was it. The good figs of the bad figs. We did look at that verse. Sorry. Okay. So that was that verse. Okay, so if you've been on social media, you've seen what this quarantine and COVID has brought out of people. You remember that in the Torah, it doesn't matter what the disease was. If it was a disease, it represented sin. It represented a curse. Anything that made you not live long on the earth or long in the land, anything that shortened life was a curse. We'll go to that one. I have that one right here. It's Deuteronomy 39. Can you guys hear the dogs barking outside? I'm very distracted by that. I hope you can't.
Barely. You can hear them just a little bit, but
All right.
not
Is it bothering you guys?
no.
Okay, I'll block it out of my brain then. 30:19, sorry. Share. Okay, this is the verse about living long in the land. I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursings. Choose life, that both thou and thy seed shall live. And it goes on, it says, and you shall live long in the land. We're told the same thing in Ephesians 6:1. It's even in the New Testament. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your mother and father, which is the first command with a promise, that it may be well with thee, and that thou mayest live long on the earth. So anything that shortens life is a curse. I had this discussion with a guy this week on social media, and his issue was that the only thing we're given in Torah as a curse out of Egypt is the leprosy, that COVID doesn't line up with a curse. But I told him, as I've shown you, that in the Old Testament, that we were given a long life for obedience, as well as the New Testament, we're given a long life for obedience. So COVID, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is shortening the lives of many. It's a curse. And on social media, we see that it's bringing out a lot of fear. I'm talking about in the body. A lot of fear, a lot of anger, a lot of fighting. Oh, you don't need the mask. Yes, you need the mask. No, you don't. You know, and it's just really has been a real eye-opener to see that. For others, it's been a test of losing jobs, maybe not having enough money. You know, they're talking about the amount of homeless in the next few months we're going to be seeing because you can't pay your bills if you're not working. Israel has a 20% unemployment rate at this point. Netanyahu is talking about giving a measly $200 per person in a family to try to make people feel better about losing their jobs with all of these months of quarantine and unemployment. Okay, so there's testing and trying going on all over the world right now. So for me, I've been going through testing and trying. And it took understanding this lesson for me to really recognize it. I told April, she asked me how my garden was doing. I told April, I said, and I've been going through just a really rough time. You know, June 30th was Dad's birthday. He's not even been gone a year. I realized on his birthday and the day before, actually, I didn't know what was wrong with me. On his birthday, I finally realized that with all of my responsibilities and taking care and being with Mom and the travel, and I had not grieved my dad. And all of that come crashing down on me about the 30th of June. And I had a week that I was just an unreconcilable mess. And at this same time, I had a lovely Euro-Asian blackbird that showed up in my garden. I want to take you to another parable. Matthew 13, verse 32. And this is for me, but it fits into what we're talking about today. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds. But when it had grown, it was the greatest among the herbs, and becometh a tree, so that the birds of the air came and lodged in the branches thereof. So the bird that came and lodged in the branches at my house began to eat all the leaves on my plant. You could see these triangular bites out of all my plants. All my plants, all my tender plants. I'm the only thing green around here for a long ways. He didn't stop there. He began to dig down in my mulch and dig up my soaker hoses, because that's where the water was, and that's where the worms were, and that's where the bugs were. Guess what? That's where my plants were. And he began to uproot my plants in my garden. This was during the week of my despair. Now, these birds were nowhere last year. They didn't exist on my property. And when they first come, I thought, oh, how cute, because he'd come with his little hopping baby, and he would get something and he would feed that little baby, and the baby would hop behind him all over the garden. And I thought, oh, that's just so cute. But I didn't know the potential of what was to come. Okay? So when I had planted my garden, I had a vision of what it would be. I had a vision of this great example of teaching that it would become. And it has been, but it's been a teaching to be. Okay? The garden is the work of my hands. In Hebrew, it's ma'asot. It's the thing that I do. And the birds are destroying the work of my hands. If I will let them, they will destroy the work of my hands. So the parable of the birds in the mustard tree, from that little seed of faith, is not a good parable. It's a parable of destruction. It's a parable of birds that come and try to tear up that work. Messiah says, the foxes of the air have their dens, and the birds of the air have their nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Later on, he says, when they ask him a question from Herod, Yeshua says, go tell that old fox. So if a fox is not a good analogy, what was not analogy? What's the word I always struggle for? If it's not a good sign, neither are the birds in the tree of the mustard. Corinthians 13 through 15 says that our works are going to be tried by fire. Okay? That we may be saved, but our works are going to be tried by fire. Our ma'asot, the things that we do, are going to be tried by fire. But that if our works burn up, we'll be saved. Okay? So this whole thing of the garden and the attack of these birds, the death of my grieving my father, the grieving of my father, and if we're going to be real and we're going to be bare, the unforgiveness that I have forgiven 1,000,001 times that still keeps showing up in my life over a certain situation that I release and comes back and bites me again, and I release and it comes back and it bites me again. These are the birds in my spiritual garden that are going to destroy my ma'asot, the good spiritual things that I do for Elohim. Are you guys with me? Are you hearing me?
Yeah, Beck, I think that is, I mean, that's such a word for all of us too, because there's been such a conglomerate of changes going on right now. And we know you can look at it through a spiritual lens and definitely see that there's something going on, but what are we doing with that? How are we working with that? You were talking about your garden, and it's interesting to me. I got my garden right where I want it, and it's beautiful. But for the next month, I can't walk to go down and tend to my garden. I have to rely on someone else tending to my garden. And to me, that's very spiritual also, to see that there's a faith walk that needs to be done. But why are we in the positions that we're in? We're being tested every day, how we're going to respond to that. And he's showing us all these signs, and some people just haphazardly, it just goes right over their head and they don't see what he's trying to show us individually.
Yes, exactly right. So these this birds in my garden was God talking to me, and it coincided, like I said, exactly with the grief. It coincides with this time of COVID and lockdown that the world is suffering. The church is suffering. Whether we're in a building, we can see ourselves as a church because we're in a building, or whether we see ourselves just as spiritually connected as the body of Messiah. Everybody on some level is going through, has not been unaffected by this on some level. And it's a time of trying your works. It's a time of asking you, are you going to be a good fig or are you going to be a bad fig? Are you finally going to let me take that from you and jump over here in the good fig basket? Or when that next cycle of destruction before this final harvest from the world happens, are you going to be some of those figs that get destroyed? Because remember, we have that seed, the word of God in us, and we've only got two options with that seed. We can bring forth the fruit, or we can cast that seed out of us. Those are our only two options. There's no middle road. Doesn't exist.
Becca,
No.
while we're pausing, I wanted to thank everyone for prayers last month. We've had a positive resolution, and I just wanted to thank everyone for their prayers.
That's glad. That's good. I'm glad you shared that.
It took me a while. This is a very trying time for everyone.
Yes.
You know, I've suffered five deaths in this time period, and it is difficult.
Yes. There has been a lot of deaths this season. You're right. There really has. And I can't go there. I have to let God be God.
Right.
But it has. There's many things that add up to, that tells me that this is a time of him shaking the fig tree. Basically, we're his fig tree. This is that season. The first fruits of figs. There was a verse I was going to show you, and I didn't write it down. It says, when you shake the fig tree, and the first fruits are ready, it falls in your mouth. So he's shaking that fig tree, and he's looking for good figs.
Yeah. Well, I still need a lot of work.
Boy, I do too. So you're in good company.
Becca, what I thought was really beautiful was when you, because it didn't click right away, but just the fact, like with the fig, that it blooms from the inside out. And that's really a picture of the wheat seed of the word of God going into our hearts. And it has to blossom from the inside before it's revealed on the outside.
Yeah.
I thought that was absolutely beautiful allegory.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Okay, let me just look ahead here and see if I've got 3 more scripture references, and I don't even know if it's something that we need to look at or not, but I'm going to look. Yeah, no, I think that was fine. Luke. Does anybody have any questions about anything so far?
I was missing, I got kicked off like 20 times today. So there was Ezekiel, I believe. Yes. About the blood and the mountains and
Oh, that was
what verse was
Ezekiel 34, about 1 through 6, I think, for that whole thing. And that basically is just a picture, if you read Josephus, exactly what happened during the fig harvest to Jerusalem.
Okay.
And this is being recorded, by the way. That recording is.
Thank you.
I haven't touched that button today, so I didn't forget to turn it back on. Oh. Anything else, guys? I think that's all I got. I would just say that the scripture says, you know, speaking about the Lord's Supper, which is again that cup that he drank for us when he gave us that bread and the wine, his blood and his body, and we're that drinking it unworthily. He says many of you are sick and asleep, meaning they have died because they drink this cup unworthily. He says if you would judge yourself, you would not be judged. So I would just encourage you that this time that we're going through, that we really need to be judging ourselves. You know, we're not in a situation like ancient Israel. We don't live in tribes. We don't live in groups. We don't live in a tent where you can hear the person next door to you snoring. We're not literally our brother's keeper anymore like they were. Okay? So we're in a situation where unless it is gross sin that's revealed to the world, that the sin that we have, the let's not even call it maybe sin, let's call it a shortcoming that we have, is now between us and God. And so know that if we don't deal with it, he will deal with it. And it's better for us to deal with it. Okay. I guess I'm going to push this stop button here, and that's all.